Super Mario Odyssey was a huge game back in 2017. Everybody loved it, the fans and the critics, and people said it was, along with Breath of the Wild, easily one of the best games of the year. Back in 2017, I would have even probably said it was my favorite game of the year. But now I'm not so sure. We're almost 2 years removed from Super Mario Odyssey, and I feel like over the course of these past couple of years, people have begun to look at the game much differently. What at the time felt like an amazing Mario game now seems to be seen by many as one that's just alright, and it feels a little forgettable. Sure, some people still really like it, but I think in general, people have started to lose interest in it, instead moving back into the Galaxy or old Open Mario style of camps. So, assuming that this is really something that's going on, and I'm not just imagining it, what happened? Why has Mario Odyssey's reputation fallen? Was Mario Odyssey really ever that good to begin with? Hello all 1,835 of you, I'm Redkwan, and was Mario Odyssey really that good? So I think to tell this story, we need to start with the game's build-up. Nintendo built up Mario Odyssey as a return to the styles of Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine, where instead of a linear level setup, the game was an open area with multiple objectives. And in a lot of ways, that was actually pretty true to what the game was. The game did have big open areas, and the game did have multiple objectives in each area. It was also different in a couple of big ways, but at the time, I don't think people really cared. When the game was released, we all thought of it like the next iteration on the more open style of Mario's, and everyone seemed very happy with the return. It was the next open 3D Mario game, and it was a great return to form that did what the old games did so well, but with modern graphics and controls. But I think that after the initial excitement died down, people started to see the game a little differently. Instead of a newer version of games like Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine, Odyssey feels like its own brand of Mario game. Going in a new direction doesn't necessarily mean that the game isn't going to be as good, and in fact, I think that in a lot of ways, it's really good for games to try new things. The problem with Super Mario Odyssey is that I think a lot of the things that were changed didn't really work. Mario Odyssey is supposed to be in the style of Super Mario 64, but it is different in those few ways. One of these major differences is the objective format. Instead of going into each level for a single objective, you stay in the level until you get enough objectives to move on. Another major difference is pretty similar. Instead of having a half dozen or so objectives per level, Mario Odyssey has about 50 moons in your average level. 50 moons. That's higher than my credit score. Now those two differences might seem like they wouldn't make a huge difference in gameplay, but they really do. And it's the reason I think Super Mario Odyssey is a completely different style from something like Super Mario 64. While Mario 64 has you going back to the same area, each time you get kicked out and have to find a different star, the level changes in a few ways. There are some stars you can always get to, but the different objectives will trigger changes in the area, and it serves to keep things fresh and allow for more creative uses of the world. In Mario Odyssey, the levels don't kick you out, which means that the level you see for your first moon is the same as the one you'll see on your last one. With the exception of boss fights at least, which I honestly kind of forgot about. The Tall Rabbit's my favorite. So what this means is that the level doesn't ever really change up. The advantage of Odyssey's way of doing it is that you don't have to watch a cutscene of Mario getting flung out of a painting every time anything happens, but the downside is that the moons feel like collectibles instead of objectives, like the Mario 64 stars felt like. But the bigger problem, in my opinion, is the second change. Mario Odyssey has so many moons, and while having a lot of objectives seems like a good thing, to fit so many in, the game has to have a lot of really bland ones, and none of them feel like objectives to me. If there are 1,000 moons in your game, you're obviously going to get some for random stupid stuff like kicking a rock or finding a corner. There are some good moons in Mario Odyssey too, but a lot of them, and I would say probably most of them, just really aren't that fun to get. The stars in Mario 64 each offer some cool puzzle or platforming challenge. Each one is well thought out and makes for an enjoyable experience. It's not always something crazy you have to do, but it always feels interesting. Mario Odyssey's moons just feel like things you stumble upon for the most part. Not to brag or anything, but I did kinda call this. Well, I mean, I also kinda said it might be the best game ever, so we'll call it a draw. I really do think this is a big problem though. The best way I can summarize the difference is that Mario Odyssey feels like you're finding collectibles, whereas Mario 64 feels like you have objectives. And I think the objectives approach makes for a way more enjoyable experience. And I think that's the reason a lot of people have stopped caring all that much about this game lately. Mario Odyssey did a lot of things really well. It looked great, the controls and camera were perfect, and when it came out, it seemed like it recaptured, no pun intended, what made Mario 64 and Sunshine so fun. But looking back on it, I think most people now would prefer another Mario Galaxy or another Mario Sunshine type of game than a second Odyssey. For a game that was so successful and well received, it's something not many people seem to be talking about anymore. And I think the main reason for that is that even though it controls better and it looks better than something like Mario 64, Mario 64 made the objectives matter when Odyssey couldn't. So is Mario Odyssey really that good? I'm not saying Mario Odyssey was a bad game, and obviously it had to have some stuff going for it to be received as well as it was, but looking back on it, I don't think it was one of the better 3D Marios we've gotten. Mario 64 and Sunshine had more interesting objectives, the Galaxy games had better variety and more interesting concepts, Mario 3D World even had a lot of things going for it. It's certainly a well-made game, but when it comes to being something that people will remember being a super fun experience, I don't really know if it achieves that. Well, I'm Redkwan. How do you feel about Mario Odyssey? Do you think I'm onto something, or do you think this was completely uncalled for and dumb? The second one's probably more accurate, but that's nothing new. Anyways, I'm Redkwan, thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully see you all later. Goodbye.